everyone, this is Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I'm here today with another dyeing experiment. Today we are going to dip dye yarn with Wilton's violet food coloring. Now we would expect to see some breaking of the color, so we would see potentially purple, blue, and maybe even reddish pink tones in the yarn, rather than a gradient of dark purple to light purple. But this is an experiment, so we will see what we get. Now in the pot, I am heating up 8 cups of water and 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. And back here I have 100 grams of fingering weight Peruvian Highland wool that I have been pre-soaking, so that way it is completely saturated. Now if I was going to do the dip dyeing with dry yarn, we would definitely see a bit more breaking of the color and a more mottled effect as it goes along, because since the yarn is dry, then the different colors would wick into the yarn fiber at different rates. But I'm going to try to do this a little more uniformly, and we will see what we end up with. So I'm going to take the food coloring, and of course my spoon does not fit in. I listened to your comments about trying to not use metal spoons because of the sound when I mix. I do take all of your comments and feedback to heart, and in fact this entire dyeing experiment was inspired by a project one of you shared with me on Ravelry. So we're getting a lot of dye. See, I really coated that end of the spoon. We've got a brilliant violet shade here in the Dyebath. Now, as always, I am wearing gloves, but that is mainly to protect my hands from getting dyed rather than concern for any of the chemicals or anything I'm using. Everything I'm using is food safe. So we can see the depth of color, and at the top of this you can see the purple wicking into some blue. So what would be awesome is if we got some hot pink and then purple and then a little bit of blue at the end. But again, we will have to wait and see what we get. But I think I might add, well, that's a bit much. A bit more food coloring. Pot. But the nice thing about dyeing yarn yourself at home is that if you don't quite like what you ended up with, you can always over dye it and dye it again. So once the dye bath is at a simmer, I will be back and we will start dipping this yarn. Alright, I've got my damp skein and my tongs, and I am ready to start dipping. Already you see that there's some differences. Kind of wish that the water was a bit deeper. But look at the purple and the blue. I guess it's harder for you to see potentially, but yeah, I wish that I had the dye bath a bit deeper, so that way it was a little easier to dip. Tongs come in really handy for this. Aha, look at that! You can already see that we are going from purple to a lot of blue. I told you that the red absorbs to the fiber really fast. Whoops. Now it's pretty easy to get all the color up the skein because it's wet. If it were dry, I would be having even more trouble dunking it than I am right now. Well, I have to say that this is working amazingly well. Sorry. Oh, I guess I'll try to come out of the light and maybe you can see how the colors are going a bit better. Oh, this is gorgeous. A very Rebecca colorway. Alright, now I am going to go ahead and stick the whole thing in now. And kind of plop that down. Because I don't want the end to be too pale, but this will let some color absorb to all of the fiber. And then I'm going to bring the heat back up a bit and let this simmer for a little bit before I take it out of the pot. I've only simmered for maybe a minute or two, but I'm going to turn the heat off now. And I just want to show you that what's left in the dye bath is this turquoisey color. So in the matter of minutes, all of the red bound to the yarn. And I'm just going to let this sit in here and cool down a bit so the tip becomes a beautiful turquoise. You can see all of the color has cleared, so it has all absorbed to the yarn. And oh, well, it looks like I got some pink up at the top because there's probably too much vinegar and some of the pink crashed out of solution. So my gradient is not perfect because I chose to leave it in the pot to get as much color as possible. But that's also like totally fine. I wasn't striving for perfection. I wanted to see what would happen when you would dip dye yarn with Wilton's violet food coloring. The color goes from a deep purple to kind of like we've got some magenta, and then a medium blue, and then finally to this pale turquoise. So the yarn is still warm, and I am going to let it sit for a bit to cool, and then I will rinse it in the sink with lukewarm water and just some liquid dish soap, and then hang it to dry, at which point I will show you what the finished yarn looks like. If you want to see what washing the yarn looks like, check out many of the other videos on the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. You see this reddish rim around the edge of the pot? That's what I mean when I say some of the red crashed out. With conditions that are too acidic, some of the red dye will no longer be soluble, and so you get these powders around the edge. And that can still dye yarn. So here we have it. The yarn that resulted from dip dyeing with Wilton's violet food coloring. I think it's cool that we do see some breaking of the color around the darkest edge. And we go from kind of this purpley magenta to a medium blue that I think would be the pure delphinium blue color. And then finally to turquoise. And in this light you can see some of the magenta stains that we got from where the dye had broken out and the yarn rubbed the pot when I placed it all in. But I think that when it knits up, these flashes of pink will be pretty fun. These stains will be a little less